Welcome to the NCO Journal Podcast, where we explore NCO professional development. This is a podcast series where we discuss published articles with authors and provide a forum for the open exchange of ideas, information, and solutions. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Brandon Cox, Senior Editor with the NCO Journal. Today we discuss the article, Project Athena in Action, Coaching in the IDP, with Sergeant Major Craig A. Collins. With us is Chaga Zapata, Managing Editor of the NCO Journal, and Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Akite, the NCOIC of the NCO Journal. Thank you all for being here. Sergeant Major Collins, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, good morning. My name is Sergeant Major Craig Collins. I'm a 13 Bravo Cannon crew member by trade, but I've been working at the Sergeant Major's Academy and Non-Commissioned Officer Leadership Center of Excellence for the last several years. I had the opportunity to go through the fellowship after completing a stint as the CSM in the Artillery Squadron in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment in Vilseck, Germany. Then I applied for the fellowship at the Academy of the Instructor for about a year, and I've been working in the Curriculum Development Directorate for the last couple of years now. So it's been a pretty interesting journey. I'm almost at 29 years of service, and I'll be retiring next July. So I really had a very interesting career. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of great people, and I'm very thankful for all the experiences I've been able to have in the Army, and hopefully I can share a few of them, on the way out, and then after I transition and continue giving back to the force and to our nation.
Sergeant Major, why do you think that Project Athena is very important right now?
One thing that's important to understand about Project Athena is it's not just a professional development tool. It's personal or professional. And as we kind of move through this and talk about coaching a little bit, we can kind of highlight a few areas where leaders can really work with soldiers and bring out those personal and professional goals that help a soldier in their leader development, in their personal and professional development as they're moving through their career. And we want to be sure that we're getting out to the force that when your soldiers return from BLC, ALC, SLC, MLC, that they'll have an IDP that's in some state of completion. And with the goal being that the squad leaders, platoon sergeants out there in the force take this IDP and continue to work with the soldiers to continue developing it, to really flesh it out and help those soldiers accomplish those goals, whether they're personal or professional, because in the end, it's all about making the force stronger, making the formations better, and making, taking care of the number one resource we have in the military, which is the individual soldier.
Tell us, though, how is this article on coaching different from the previous two that you've published here on the NCO Journal?
Yes, this article in particular is more specifically aimed at the coaching process that's associated with Project Athena. And the difference in the other two articles, the first article was kind of an overview of what Athena does and the different levels of NCOP and MEET, what the assessments are, and then how they kind of tie in with what the skill level of the soldier is at each one of those schools. For a skill level 2, 3, 4, there's different assessments that kind of tie in with that particular skill level. So that was the first article. The second one was more about a scenario for a platoon sergeant and how the assessments a platoon sergeant would take in NCOP and me would tie in with the skill sets that are required of a platoon sergeant leading, say, 30, 40 soldiers, and how to apply the capabilities of your force to accomplish a mission. Those are important aspects to keep in mind as you move forward. And we continue to train and prepare for that next conflict, whatever it might be.
Sergeant Major, I've got a pretty good question, I think, that targets more or less the junior audience and the junior leader audience. And that is, in your experience, what did coaching look like prior to Project Athena? And what does coaching look like now? And why is that better?
That's a great question. From my experience, and when we have a class actually that we went around and taught at not all, but most of the NCOAs on it. We call it as a coaching workshop that we developed. One of the first things we ask, just to kind of as a concrete event to kind of energize the cognitive centers of the class is how do you define coaching, or what's coaching in your own words? One of the main answers that a lot of groups gave us was coaching is kind of like a sports type of concept, right? It's like I'm a coach. I'm going to teach you how to run the play. Then I'm going to guide you through the process. Say, for example, in the Army, maybe it's we want to do battle drill 1. But that was kind of the thought process. And from my experience, that's kind of what coaching was historically. It was a very sports analogy centric. As far as here's the play, we're gonna run it. The coach is going to critique us and guide us through how to do it from start to finish. And that was fine, and particularly in the context of what we were doing at that time, 20, 30 years ago. But as we've evolved, as our leadership techniques have evolved, as the threat to our military has evolved, it's requiring us to do different things. In all fairness, the sports-centric type of coaching has not went away. We're just kind of adding an element to counseling. But the biggest difference, from my perspective, is in the coaching specific with Athena, is it's all centered on the soldier, the individual that's being coached. It's about what they want to do. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not telling them how to do it. I'm just helping them to discover what they want to accomplish, and then helping guide them through the process of completing an IDP that can then help them to take action.
Yeah, I recently had a conversation with my soldier, and we were talking about this specifically. He just returned back from ALC, and one of the things he mentioned to me was that he wished that there was more coaching and counseling walkthroughs kind of to do that. And so that's one of the things that I really liked about this article, was that you're kind of giving an example and going through the motion of coaching and the steps to take for somebody to do that. Because I think that will help the force, right? It'll help them see, or at least go through an example and see something that's not commonly practiced in a process, but mostly done through conversations. And I think that's one of the takeaways about that. What would you say is the reason why you included this little kind of walkthrough or this process for the force?
When we add a example into a paper like this, I think the real importance is just to give the individual coaches out there, the leaders, the first line supervisors, the platoon sergeants, the first sergeants, okay? But then also it can be good for the officer side, the platoon leaders, the company commanders. And just to give them an idea, because once you get started, a conversation can really flow pretty easily. And depending on the individual that's being coached, they may or may not have an idea of what kind of goals they want to do, what they want to accomplish, what they want to get after with their personal and professional life. But a good coach will listen and ask relevant questions. Okay, we call it active listening. Is one of the rules that we have taught in our coaching workshop. So if I'm actively listening to what someone is saying, basically I'm listening for like keywords or phrases. For example, if they say something to the effect of, I really think I'm ready for more responsibility. That statement right there would get my attention. And that would be an area that I want to follow up with on some effective questioning, like in a sense of, okay, what kind of responsibility would you like to have? Okay, the questions are always going to be open-ended. I mean, and occasionally you'll ask a yes or no question, but typically you want to ask open-ended questions that will generate the discussion. And you want to guide the soldier without telling them what to do.
Yeah, the active listening aspect of your article, I thought jumped out at me, and that's one of the things that when I was a young NCO, that you can hear somebody, but that doesn't mean you're listening to them. You don't you're hearing the words, but you're not hearing the message behind it, and that's I think that's an important takeaway, that the listening and questioning aspect of your article. I think it's something that. And out of all the things that you talked about, I think those are the two main, most important things as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah, that's because when we talk about leaders knowing their soldiers, right? Like when we say, hey, leaders should be more engaged, get to know their soldiers more. The key aspect to that is active listening. Because when you're actively listening, you're going to pick up on clues, beliefs, values, or differences in
needs as well.
and needs. Yeah, right. So I think that's the key part of this coaching process, is that the active listening. And I thought that was extremely important to kind of touch on and kind of explain that process a little bit more, and with examples.
This coaching style it may take a few repetitions before the coaches actually get really comfortable with it. But what we found by experimenting with it and really working through the process is it gets easier and easier with every repetition.
One of the questions that I had here, one of the things that I sent you, was about using Staff Sergeant Cox as your corporal battle, and then so he would be Corporal Cox, and you will be Staff Sergeant Collins. Maybe we can go through one of these scenarios, and you can kind of actually walk us through it, or actually conduct one with Sergeant Cox here, and kind of go into it as an actual discussion, so the audience can see what exactly it is you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. All right. Okay, so set the stage for you. You've agreed on a time when Sergeant Corporal Cox is going to be able to come in and sit down, and I've blocked off an hour on the schedule, and we're going to come into the office, close the door, have a little bit of privacy. Okay, to prepare the coaching session. I have just a few resources that I've printed out. I have the coaching resource card, which is available on Capel's website. I have printed out a couple of the blank IDP forms, the brand new DA form. I'm going to give one to Corporal Cox, and I'm going to have one take notes on. Okay, so he comes in, sits down. Good morning, Corporal. How are you doing?
Good, Staff Sergeant. Thank you.
All right, great. Hey, listen, while we're here, we're going to do a coaching session, and we're going to take the IDP that you have started at BLC and try to flesh it out a little bit more. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we already know each other, so I'm not going to go through all the formal introduction piece, because we've been working together for the last year or two. But I do want to re-emphasize number 2 on the coaching worksheet here, the coaching card. It's the confidentiality piece. And every time we do a coaching session, I'm kind of going to bring this up, but I just want you to understand and be sure we highlight this, is during this coaching session, I ask you to be open and honest. This is non-attributional, meaning anything we talk about is just between us. Okay. This information that we discussed today will not be used for promotions or selection of different duty positions. This is specifically for you, to help you develop an IDP and to guide your self-development process. Okay. Okay. So the rules of the session, we've talked about this before. You talked about this at BLC with your instructors. But the one thing I would ask you is this: please be honest and open with yourself and with me. And the reason that's important is, therefore, that way I can ask you relevant, effective questions that can help guide this process of your self-discovery. The second part is, if you're not honest with yourself, we won't be able to make the most of this session. So when we look at your strengths, but more importantly, when we look at your developmental needs, I would ask you to be willing to accept criticism in a constructive fashion. that can help you then to look at it objectively. It's important to kind of maybe take a step back and be objective during this process. Okay, it's not a personal in nature, other than the sense that we want to help you achieve personal goals. Okay, so I just ask you to be objective as much as possible. I know some of these things can be a little, generate some strong feelings, but we want to just look at it objectively, come up with solutions to accomplish your particular goals. All right, I'll help you in identifying a plan, but just understand that this is your plan. It's about your self-development, the goals that you want to accomplish. I'm just here to help you in any way that I can. Okay, and then I'll help you toward the end of the session. We'll try to fill in some of the IDP to capture some of the things we talk about. All right, any questions on that? Any comments?
Not at this time, sorry.
All right, great. So first question, and really the most important question I'm going to ask you during this entire session is, what do you expect to get out of this session?
I hope to expect to, kind of define some of my short and long-term goals and figure out where we need to go from here.
So if I heard you correctly, you'd like to establish some short and long-term goals and then chart a way ahead on how to accomplish them.
Yes, Sergeant.
So note right here, as a coach, I don't typically take a lot of notes, or I don't write a lot. I just focus my attention on the soldier I'm coaching. But that right there, I would have written down. I would have written down short and long-term goals, and chart a way ahead, something like that. So I'm going to keep that in mind, because when we get ready to close the session, I'm going to bring that back up. Okay, that's just a sidebar note for the coaches out there as they go through the process. Okay, so next question: do you have any short or long-term goals in mind, right off the top, you want to talk about?
Well, I know I just completed BLC, and I've kind of done a little bit of college, but I'm kind of thinking maybe the Army's not for me, and I'm not really sure what my short and long-term goals should be at this time.
Okay, that's very relevant, and very, to be honest with you, that's very common. When I was a young soldier, I wasn't sure the Army was for me either, but I was fortunate to have some great leaders that really cared about me and inspired me to want to move along. So what are you interested in? What are some of your interests?
Well, I'm interested in, I like to play video games. I like to hang out with my family and friends, and I do plan on going to college eventually.
Okay, great. So let's focus on college for a second. What's your current level of education?
I just have 30 college credits at this time, Sergeant.
Okay, you have 30 college. Okay, that's good. That's not bad. Have you done the military sweep, where the colleges give you credits for your military experience?
I haven't looked into that yet, Sergeant.
Okay, so that's something that we could take a look at. All right, I would ask you to put that down on your objectives. Just make a note on the IDP somewhere that you want to do the sweep.
Okay.
Just call it the college sweep, for just kind of a shorthand answer. And then that'll give you a better idea of where you're currently at. You've taken a few classes, sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
and now we want to see how your experience translates and how that gets you closer. So what kind of a degree or what kind of field are you interested in studying?
In video games.
Video games. Okay. So is there a college degree on video games?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there's not a regular college degree on video games, but are you interested in designing games maybe?
That might
Building
be
them?
an interest. Yeah. I might like to do
Okay.
that.
So yes, maybe some type of computer programming type of stuff. And there's definitely degrees in schools that teach these kind of things.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Okay. If I'm hearing you correctly of what you're
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of wanting to do here, it sounds to me like you want to get a college degree, maybe a bachelor's degree or higher, depending on where you want to go. And then I would recommend the first thing we do is get you over to the Ed Center and talk with a counselor about what the options are. Does that sound reasonable?
That does sound good. I'll do that.
Okay, so at this point in the coaching session, you might tell them to take a note right there. Hey, write down on the action plan to go to the Ed Center, or maybe as the coach, you could put down Ed Center just as a shorthand note. But the action piece is what's important. All right, great. So as you think about that, so we talked about education. What else would you want to do? Are you married? Do you want to have a family, or you like the single life?
I'm currently single. I'm just living in the barracks, Sergeant.
Okay. How's the barracks life treating you?
It's going okay. I currently have a pretty serious girlfriend though, and I'm thinking about trying to move out and move in with her.
Okay, great. This is an area we could talk about for a little bit. Looking at what are some of the advantages of living in the barracks, and what are some disadvantages?
I guess some benefits could be the fact that I don't have to pay to live there. It's close to work. It's close to the DFAC. I have people around me at all times, that I can ask for help if I need it.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I lived in the barracks when I was a younger soldier, and one of the advantages you just kind of mentioned was you don't have to pay for it. I mean, you don't get BAH when you live in the barracks, but you don't have all the expenses associated with owning a house or living on an apartment. So there may be an opportunity here to save a little bit of money. Okay, one advantage. You said close to the DFAC. All right, so if you eat in the DFAC, again, saving money, right? And then once you get married, your expenses kind of go up. You'll have to have a car. You have to pay for gas, insurance. You have to drive to work every morning. You have to pay for your apartment, electricity, cable, internet, all those things. So those are important things to kind of keep in mind. So how does that factor into your planning process, or what do you think about that?
Blank look.
Yeah.
I think that's a relevant answer. Actually, he's just probably looking at you like,
I probably never thought about all these things.
Yeah,
and that's going to cost money, and I probably should save some money while I'm here in the barracks. And
yes, our Major, I flashed them a card here saying with the word pregnant with a question mark, and then that's a lot.
Children cost a lot of money too. So that response you just gave me, I've seen that before in real life. You start talking about these things, then you start discussing them, right? And then I can almost see the wheels or the gears spinning in the soldier's head when they're thinking about these things. Just kind of like what just happened right then. You just kind of sit there for a second. So that's part of the coaching process also.
Yeah, that's what happens 90% of the time that we talk to Staff Sergeant Cox anyway.
It's true. I'm kind of blank vacuum in here.
No, but I think that gear turning is important, right? Because that's part of that critical thinking. They start thinking about, man, I really don't have a plan. I don't have, these things that I want, but I don't really know how to get after that. Right. And so I think that's part of where that coach comes in and says, right, here's solid steps you can take.
Well, if I'm still in the situation, that does make a lot of sense. Because I didn't really think about it like that. If I just think I'm going to get a degree magically, and I think that getting out of the Army is the easiest way for me to do these things or have a girlfriend or move in or, try and progress in my personal life as opposed to my professional life, then that's not really helping me. And if I don't realize that without having a coach, then I may make terrible decisions. And I think that's part of it.
Then in the immediate action plan on the IDP, I would say something like, hey, just jot a quick note down, speak with a financial advisor, right? So now we've already established two different things in your immediate action plan.
Yeah.
The Ed Center and a financial advisor. Okay, so now we haven't established any short-term goals yet, but we're putting down objectives and we're capturing these things, right? So you might circle back to it as short-term goal is you want to get a bachelor's degree in computer programming. Okay, that's a short-term goal. It's specific. It's a bachelor's degree. It's measurable. Me as your squad leader, I've been observing you for the last couple of years, and you're very energetic and you're very detail-oriented. This are my observations. So are these two goals attainable? You want to get a degree and you want to save up some money for potentially getting married in the future. I think they're definitely attainable. So specific, it's measurable, attainable, relevant. Are they relevant to your maybe your bigger goals? Well, we haven't got to that point of discussion yet, but a bachelor's degree is always relevant. And that's where you want to go to the Ed Center and talk to a counselor about enrolling in college within the next 90 days. So you see how that kind of tied together? Mm-hmm. We just established a long-term goal, a short-term goal, and an immediate action plan for the next 90 days. Okay, so really we're kind of in between steps 4 and 5 right now. Okay, the next step we want to take a look at is assist the leader in understanding the feedback on the Project Athena assessments. Corporal Cox, what does the feedback look like for your SET-I, your self-assessment about how you see yourself?
I'm pretty good at. I'm a good teammate. I'm very work oriented, detail oriented. I'm trustworthy with my coworkers. Okay,
that's perfect. We can work with that right there. All right, so your feedback is telling me that your team, you're a good teammate, you're very work and detail oriented, and you're trustworthy. So take a look at your IDP there, your self-assessed strengths. I would suggest that you make a note in the first column of self-assessment. All right, and you'll see how this plays in later, but we're going to take those strengths and we're going to leverage them on how to get after your goal of accomplishing the bachelor's degree. And then whatever other goals we come up with throughout the process, okay? What are some areas that in your feedback that show developmental needs?
Okay, so timeliness and efficiency.
Okay, so those are some areas that we can work on, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and jot a little note down under self-assessed developmental needs, okay? And we'll get after that. And then we'll start thinking of some ways we can put them into action to give you some repetitions on working through them, okay? We have the next area we want to look at is creating an individual development plan. And we've been kind of jotting down a few notes here and there as we move through our discussion, but now we're going to kind of try time together a little bit, okay?
Okay.
All right, so you stated you want to get a bachelor's degree, is that correct?
Yes, Sergeant.
Okay, so I would recommend you put that down under a long-term goal. That'll probably take a few years, depending on what the sweep comes out as. Okay, short-term goals you can put down. Let's say I would suggest something maybe like 5 classes this year. Does that sound reasonable to you?
I think so. Just need to maybe fix some time management so I have time to do the courses.
Okay, time management. Good. That might be an area you want to write down under self-awareness over in the leadership column. Maybe make a little note right there. And then lastly, you want to provide a few words of encouragement and motivation. So I would say something to the effect of, I think we had a great session today. I appreciate your time. I think these are some very worthy goals, and getting a bachelor's degree and saving up some money for that future family are very, very viable goals, very important. And I've observed your work performance for the last couple of years. I know that you can do these things. I'm very confident in you, and I'm here to help you in any way I can. What's the most important thing that we want soldiers to take away from this, right? And if it's establishing a short-term goal or two and coming up with a few actionable items, then kind of keeping it a little bit shorter is maybe more effective for that particular, that audience. So I appreciate it. I appreciate what you and the team do to share all this information with the force. And I'm a regular reader of the journal, so I really appreciate it. There's always some really interesting articles. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Sergeant Major, for joining us and discussing your article today. And a thank you to our audience. Remember to put your knowledge to the page, submit articles, and get published with the NCO Journal. Don't forget to check out our webpage and follow us on social media. We'll catch you next time on the NCO Journal Podcast.